Hello, and welcome to episode 19 of A Week in Watches. I'm your host, Zach Weiss. Thank you for joining me. A Week in Watches, if this is your first time, is a weekly look back at watch news, reviews, stories, and frankly anything we found interesting from the world of watches over the last week. Please like and subscribe to this video and our channel if you found this video informative or anything else for that matter. We do appreciate it. And if you're listening to this in podcast format, give us a rating, a thumbs up, a star, whatever it is, if you have the time. Thank you. Before we get into it, we have a sponsor. So this week's sponsor is William Wood Watches, which is a British watch brand inspired by the founder's heroic firefighting grandfather. Each watch contains over 100 years of firefighting history, so stay tuned to later in the episode for more from William Wood Watches. First up, we're heading to the club with Nomos. So Nomos is a brand you are likely very familiar with if you've been into watches for some time. They're a Glashütte-based brand. I hope I got that right this time. I know last time I didn't. And they're a fantastic brand that I think is really popular because they kind of exemplify a really good value. They tend to start at a price point around like 15, and then they don't go too much higher than 5. They have some things that are much higher, but they really play in that sort of really nice sweet spot. And they feature in-house movements, which is quite, rare, particularly like 5 to 10 years ago when we were first getting into this. No other brand was offering quite the same value that they were. But regardless of that, Nomos also offers a really clean German aesthetic, smaller watches, thinner watches, more kind of Bauhaus-driven watches. If you're into dress watches, they're a really great brand to look at. If you're into minimalist watches, they're also fantastic. And they have like several core lines and lots of versions within those lines. They have like 20 sizes per watch, 100 dials, that's an exaggeration, but different movements, hand-wound, automatic. They really give you a ton of variety within these sort of set styles that they have. And today is frankly no different. So we have 2 new watches in the Club line that are part of the Club Sport model. So the Club watch has frankly always been one of the sportier watches in the Nomos collection. Before they even introduced things like the Ahoy and some other aquatic watches, the Club, despite being a small sort of field, like a mid-century field watch style watch, always had 100 meters of water resistance, which was really nice for just quite a petite watch. They upped that to 200 meters, and they gave it this sport moniker to it. And when they came out, they were quite large. The sport models were 42 millimeters. Now, this is a watch I actually personally have owned, and they start at 36 millimeters. So for me, it's kind of a small watch at heart. So seeing it at 42 was a bit jarring, but of course there's a customer for that and they want to appeal to them. But now they brought out a sport model in a smaller size, which is closer to the original. I wouldn't blame you if you've lost what I'm talking about yet. So the new model is a 37 millimeter Club Sport model. 37 millimeters I actually think is a really interesting sweet spot. People tend to go for even numbers. Everyone wants 36, everyone wants 38. 37 is great. It's a really great size. I think for this model with a 200 meter water resistance, it actually offers a really kind of cool option for something a little bit more rugged, but still very refined and quite thin. So the watch features the DUW 3001 Neomatic movement, which is an in-house automatic from them that is designed to be thin. So the whole watch is 8.3 millimeters thick, which is really a wonderful thickness, particularly when you think about it being 200 meters water resistant. So you can, essentially dive with this watch despite being quite thin. In addition to the new size, they've also added a new bracelet to the design. And that bracelet, frankly, looks an awful lot like kind of an oyster style bracelet. So it's a really kind of classic looking bracelet. The earlier Nomos bracelets were much more, kind of artistic looking or a little bit more designy focused rather than necessarily like classic watch looking. But this looks straight up like a kind of classic sport watch bracelet. And frankly, it looks really nice on the Club case. For this model, they've also introduced 2 new colors, Polar Blue and Petrol Green. And I have to say, once again, both are quite lovely. They're Sunray Burst, the Petrol Green, and I guess I'm just a sucker for green dials. Really hits a note, sort of like a light mossy green, but with this metallic finish to it. I feel like these are both really attractive watches. I will say, perhaps in the scheme of Nomos, they are perhaps a little bit more crowd pleasers. They're a little bit more generic, and I think with the intention of attracting a larger audience, whereas they used to do stuff that's a little bit more funky. So I would love to see another funky design come out of the brand sometime soon. That just said, they are undeniably nice. and they are priced at $3,150. Serica returns with their first GMT. So Serica is a relatively young brand based out of France. We've been covering them since their launch on Worn and Wound. They're known for, I think, a few things, but in particular, always having sterile dials with sort of like a mid-century military aesthetic to them, but they really take them in their own direction to make sort of a vintage-inspired but quite quirky watch. Particularly in their most recent watches, a really great eye towards sort of finishing, and I don't know, they're just developing into a really fantastic brand. Their dive watch that they came out with last year, the 5303, has felt like a really big step up for the brand. Recently, they launched a newer model of that called the 5303-3, which had this beautiful bezel on it, which was a split of like sky blue with a metal rim. It's a really cool split bezel design, just very unique to them and just really, really attractive. So their first GMT, the 8315, is based on that case, the 5303. Features a 39 millimeter diameter and sort of a twisted lug design. They also kept the same dial format, which is sort of a mix of like a crosshair with dots sort of pulled in towards the center and some lines to it. It's very distinctive, but once again, sterile dial, which, isn't for everyone, but it definitely gives their watches a unique look. To further give their GMT its own sort of flavor, they went with a lollipop GMT hand, which is just kind of fun. They put a sort of a burnt lume in the middle there, almost like it really has some like aged radium or something like that. But the standout feature of the design is once again the bezel. So rather than doing the sort of 24-hour bezel that you might associate particularly with mid-century style dive watches come travel watches, they went for a 12-to-12 split day-night bezel, which is made with black and white ceramic, featuring the words anti-meridian and post-meridian, where 12 would be at the top and the bottom of the bezel. And then they colored it in an asymmetrical fashion, if you will. So there's actually more white ceramic than there is black ceramic. So rather than just cutting across from 6 to 6, there's actually sort of a bowed line. And what this does, is prevent the split line from cutting into those numerals, but also sort of suggests like that there's more day than night, which I think commonly there is, at least in France, perhaps not in Alaska and various other places. We've actually seen other brands do something sort of similar, where they will color the bezel to not interrupt the numerals. Particularly, I think of Grand Seiko has done that on some of their sportier GMT models. It's uncommon and I really like it. Regardless, it's a very wide bezel, it's very bold, and it really just sets off the whole design and the dial. The thing is very funky and very stylish, and I think it just looks really cool and fantastic. It's nice to see something unique done in that kind of mid-century GMT space, which is fairly well tread. Powering the 8315 is a chronometer spec Soprod C125 movement, which is a Swiss-made automatic GMT that we're seeing fairly more commonly now that ETA supplies are sort of drying up. When you order this watch, and this is really cool, it is available with either a left or a right side crown, which is awesome. I feel like I would get it destro just to have it destro, because why not? And it costs approximately $1,535 converted into USD. If you order now, they are currently in pre-order for January 2023 delivery. But more importantly, I'm hoping to see this watch at Wind Up Watch Fair in New York City this coming week, October 21st through 23rd, because Serica is attending. And now, a word from our sponsor. William Wood has launched the Fearless Collection, a trilogy of 40mm firefighting field watches. They feature matte black cases with boldly colored chapter rings and rose gold applied markers set on like a black crackle surface for a bold and aggressive style. In the crown is brass from a 100-year-old firefighting helmet that has been smelted down, and the straps are actually made from recycled fire hose. The case backs then feature a dramatic stamping of a modern firefighter's helmet with a colored visor, which allows a pretty cool view of the Seiko NH35 automatic movement within. Priced at $1,000, the Fearless Collection is available in red, yellow, or orange right now at williamwoodwatches.com. Boldr launches an affordable, true GMT. So Boldr is a Singapore-based tool watch brand known for tough and very affordable watches with a very modern aesthetic to them. They tend to have really, really great specs for the dollar. In fact, we like them so much, we worked with them on our Adapt watches. Sorry for the shameless plug, I couldn't resist. They have a line that's called the Odyssey Divers, which are extremely rugged series of watches. They range in like diameter from 40 to 45 millimeters. They're quite chunky. They have very faceted case shapes. Like I said, there's like a very modern, toolish kind of a watch. And this most recent launch is part of that collection. It's called the Odyssey Freediver GMT. So it's 44 millimeters. It's steel, has 300 meters of water resistance, and features a sapphire crystal, of course, and a ceramic 24-hour bezel in 2 colors. Each one is split colored. The dial has a gradient to it, so it's like a transparent gradient dial, which is quite neat looking. Shows the top side of the movement as well as the corrected date wheel. Extremely large lume plots, extremely large lumed hands. Is a very aggressive styled watch. But the reason why we're talking about it, I mean, it's a cool watch too, but the other reason we're talking about it is because inside is the Miyota 9075 true GMT caliber, meaning that it has a local jumping hour rather than a quote-unquote collar 24-hour hand. We saw this movement once before, just a few weeks ago when Bulova unveiled it in their GMT. I believe they were the first brand to have it. And like we said then, it was going to be very exciting when we started to see this trickle out into the world of micro brands, because I think, you know, that's when we're going to start to see a lot of really cool ingenuity with this, some clever designs. And frankly, it's very cool for Boldr to have been one of the earliest brands with it. So of course, because this is a Miyota, part of what makes this so fantastic is that the watch is sub $1,000. It costs $899, despite the really good specs and despite having a true GMT movement. There are 3 versions: black, red, black, green, and black, brown. And that refers to the bezel color. Like I said, those are all ceramic, so it's really fantastic at the price point. And they are available for pre-order now for delivery in like mid to late December. It's a me, Tag Heuer. I guess this is the release of the week. It's certainly the watch that might be most memorable of this week, and love it or hate it, this is certainly a watch. Actually, it's 2 watches, and they're kind of ridiculous and awesome at the same time, but certainly going to cause a reaction. So, in what is probably the unlikeliest collab or mashup in the world of Swiss-made watches, it's the Tag Heuer X Mario watches. Yes, that is Nintendo Mario. Last year, they released the connected watch, which certainly caused a stir, very strong reactions. I think I'll leave it at that. If you want to know more, just go read comments somewhere on the internet. This year, they've done 2 new watches that are not smart, well, no smarter than mechanical watches ordinarily are. And they're not just Mario. They are actually Tag Heuer X Mario Kart, which, personally speaking, I think I have a lot more sort of attachment to in the world of gaming. I played it a lot on the 64, on the GameCube, on the Wii. This is a game I played way too much in my life, so I definitely, just have that sort of immediate nostalgia reaction when I see that they worked with them, as well as, that sort of immediate judgmental feeling. But I really do like some of what they did here with these watches. So there's the 2 watches. The first one is the Formula 1 X Mario Kart Limited Edition. This is a 44 millimeter chronograph featuring the caliber 16, which I believe is a 7750 or like a Sellita SW500 base. It has various Mario Kart cues around it. It's got like a checkerboard dial. It's red and black. Mario himself is driving a little cart on the sub-second dial over at 9. But the coolest feature here on this watch is that the date window every 5 days will show one of the various power-ups from the game. So, you might see a little star there, a little shell. I think that's just hilarious and playful and frankly kind of cute. It also sort of reminds me of the Alon Silberstein watches that came out last year, where there was the day-date version and the day would be a different emoji and you could kind of set it for your mood. It's a little different, but I like the idea of using the date mechanism for something playful and absurd. There's 3,000 of these units in the limited edition, and they are $4,300. But we're not done. Oh no. The next one is the piece de resistance, the Formula 1 X Mario Kart Limited Edition Chronograph Tourbillon. That is right. There is a Mario Brothers tourbillon. This one is powered by the Heuer 02T chronometer tourbillon. It was quite famous when it launched, I believe in like 2015, 2016. for being the most affordable chronograph tourbillon. In fact, probably one of the most affordable tourbillons in general for a Swiss-made tourbillon, in that it was priced at $15,000, which, I mean, is like a zero less than some other chronograph tourbillons. Yeah, it's just a very rare complication. So it was really a bold move when TAG launched that, and a very cool one as well. This one is 45 millimeters, so a touch larger, but this one is also made out of titanium, whereas the other one was steel, which I kind of feel like 45 millimeters in titanium would wear better than 44 millimeters in steel. Might have to test that out to prove it for myself. I'm not sure. This one is a lot more dramatic looking. The dial is black and red as well, but features a sort of like laser line look to it, or it definitely reminds me of some of the later versions of Rainbow Road, that haunting level. But what is really the star here is the tourbillon itself, as you can imagine, which is exposed down at 6, which features on its little arms that are going around a Mario in a cart, a bullet bill, and the blue shell. I both love it and hate it. The blue shell, if you've played the game, is the worst thing ever. It's the thing nightmares have been made of. I mean, I don't know how many races I've lost, how many controllers I've broken, how many curses I've levied into the void because of that damn blue shell. It's almost a memento mori of sorts, reminding you that inevitably the blue shell is coming for you. Anyway, they've made 250 units of this watch. They're priced at $25,600. Like I said, I both love it and hate it. I love that they made it. I don't know if I could look at the blue shell every day, but the fact that there's a Mario Kart chronograph tourbillon now in existence is sort of awesome, and I have to give TAG Heuer some credit for that. And that's it for episode 19 of A Week in Watches. I'd like to thank our sponsor, William Wood, once again. Please don't forget to check out the Fearless collection at williamwoodwatches.com, and also don't forget to head to wornandwound.com daily for more watch news, reviews, and stories, and I will see you next time. Thank you.